Members, let's resume our meeting. Please be seated. Please be seated. Well, the Permanent Secretary is yet to join us, and we need her to answer questions. Let's wait for a while. Without her, your questions may not be able to be answered. Also, take your time, Mrs. Fung. Dr. Kwokake, 4 minutes, first round. Well, this is an unprecedented game of fraud. In 2008, they said unequivocally that $21.6 billion would be sufficient. That was the time when we didn't have this abasement. And now we are saying that we are told that $23 billion. And now they want to get $3.6 billion. Well, even if this is robbery, you have to tell me the ultimate bill, the total sum, but no answer. Well, this government is one with no credibility. The officials have all gone. Those in the 2008 have all gone. But Mrs. Carrie Lam is now the CE. It's not really meaningful to seek funding approval because the ultimate sum will be different, whatever we approve today. This is a black hole, a funding black hole. How can the government do this to us? When at first, the entire plan was not carefully thought through, and now we are committed, and we have to commit more and more funds. We're talking about taxpayers' money. But then the entire facility will be in the hands of the authority, and then their senior managers would get very high pay. It's an independent kingdom, and then we are offering facilities to host exhibitions and shows to promote patriotism. So, Permanent Secretary, what about putting a stop to the entire project? There's still time to do it. We can still stop it. If we don't have this very expensive basement, can you give us a better plan? Don't waste tens of billions of dollars. Give us a plan B. Permanent Secretary. As I said at the outset, we need this basement in order to make sure that there is east-west connection, because at grade there will be no at grade carriageway for vehicles. We are already building it part. So there's no plan B, because without this there is no vehicular access. We have adopted the design from Foster and Partners after the consultation. Did you tell the public during the consultation that this would cost tens of billions of dollars? Well, would you buy anything without knowing the price tag? Did you tell the people during construction that this would cost us tens of billions of dollars? From 2011 to 2014, there were 3 public engagement exercises. We will present the 3 options. Did you talk about the price tag? Well, there was no final price estimate, so we didn't mention this. What was the price tags that you told people? We didn't have this budget for the integrated basement. So it's cheating. They knew that this price would be exorbitant, and they didn't tell you anything. Well, there was no basement idea at the point. Mr. Jeremy Tam. I think Dr. Kwok K compares this to robbery. Well, this is not true. Well, it's more like asking for ransom. And now it's even worse. We don't even have the final budget. And now you started to work and you wanted to have a basement. There's a free space proposed and the black box theater. I think the entire idea was concocted in this black box theater. You are going to cost tens of billions of dollars on all various things, and we still don't know the final bill. Members have asked you, how much are we expected to spend on all these facilities? How many more basements are we going to need? Above the ground level is BOT. Underground is paid for by the government. Let me ask this again. Do you have an estimate on the final cost of the entire project? First, we thought $21.6 billion would be good enough. You complete everything, and now all of a sudden you want to dig such a big pit, a bottomless one. And how many more times would you need to come back so that we can foot the entire build? Well, in answering Mr. Michael Teen's question, I gave a very rough guesstimate that we did in 2014, and that is by 2020, by the time we would have completed the basement, it's $23 billion. As I've said, it's a very rough estimate, and all the presumptions are not the same as the current plan, because we are not going to provide everything in 2020. We will come back to give an account in due course to this council. When you decided to build this basement, did you first of all seek the consent of this council first? But that's the design was done by the Foster and Partners in order that we can segregate pedestrians and traffic, and we can provide some public open space. So the road has to be provided underground. That design was chosen by the people during the consultation and approved by Xcode. And since 2013, we have been coming back a number of times to brief members on the construction progress. At the time when it was approved by Xcode in 2013, was there any cost estimate? If we cannot say that the exact estimate at this point, of course there was none in there was no such actual estimate in 2013. But we know that it would be more expensive than building a car park on the ground. Why is it that the WKCDA is not asked to foot the bill for this part? At first, we said it should be apportioned. The cost should be apportioned on the basis of 50 to 50, but then we realized that the WKCDA's financial position was rather shaky, and the $21.6 billion would not be sufficient for the entire project, and therefore the CS at that time announced that the government would be responsible for building the basement in order to facilitate the completion. What would be the shortfall on the part of WKCDA if we don't do this? It was in the Finance Committee paper. I think $1.57 billion can be attributed to cultural facilities and food and beverage facilities, but we can only afford to build all the phase 1 facilities and some of the phase 2 facilities, but not the phase 3 facilities. And some of the money will be also used to help the construction of M+. And we also have to pay the WKCDA some management fee in accordance with the information provided in the Finance Committee paper. Mr. Wu Chi-wai, as things stand, we know that the authority will spend on certain superstructure projects such as CG Center and Plus. Can you tell us the costs for these facilities? And I have one remaining question from the last round. And the basement is, of course, closely integrated with the superstructure above ground. And your cost estimate that you have is based on the existing design and the various plant and equipment needed for the superstructure. If there are amendments to the superstructure project, if you then subsequently consider that there should be some changes, that is what I refer to as the variation orders. If there are changes of this nature, who would shoulder the resultant increase in cost?
I will invite Jeremy to talk about the costs of the known buildings. And as for the Lyric Theatre, the tendering has been granted. So, and the basement is unlikely to be affected because the tendering was already done and the plan was presented to LegCo and it was accepted. Chairman, you said the tendering was done and changes are unlikely, but in case there are changes, who would bear the costs for the changes due to the superstructure? Would the WKCDA be responsible? Or would the government pay according to the entrustment agreement? I'll invite Ms. Pang to address this question first. Thank you. And the basement is a basic work, and facilities would have to be built in terms of the basement facilities. We have communicated with the authority on what's need to be done in order to offer more flexibility for the future. Based on the justifications of changes, we would examine such justifications to see whether the changes are appropriate as well as the associated costs. The government will work with the WKCDA on any changes. Mr. Wu Chi-wai, if you have further questions, you can wait for the next round. Can they talk about the costs of other buildings, Jeremy?
Yes, the contracts that we've already awarded to date and the construction that we have underway, Z2 is our first one. That is around 2.7 billion. We also have our M+ Museum, but under that contract we have the M+ Museum, the interfacing car park underneath the park, the conservation and storage facility, and we also have the P39B RDE tower. That's all under one contract, and that is around $5.9 billion. And then we also have the park contract, which is under construction, and that is approximately $1 billion for that one. And then in 2016, we opened up the very small arts pavilion, which was around 30 million.
係郭家麒議員第二次3分鐘。
主席，08年撥款去到而家9年。
Since 2008, it has been 9 years. We have not seen any cultural facilities, but they are they keep coming back for more money. So I just want a quick answer. In 2014, it was $23 billion. Now we are at 2017. The completion date is 2020 and beyond. According to your estimate, will it cost more than $30 billion? P.S. In 2014, the estimate was $23 billion, and it was the money of the day prices. So by that time, if the project is complete by 2020, the cost would be $23 billion. I'm asking whether it will cost about $30 billion by the time the whole project is completed. Chairman, Zone 2A, Tone 3A and 3B, while 3A would be completed at around 2020, so the money of the day prices should be comparable. But for zones 2A, 2B, and 2C, we are yet to obtain funding from LegCo, so they are unlikely to be completed by 2020. I do not have such figures on hand. Chairman, Hong Kong has created record after record. WKCD is very expensive. We have the most expensive basement, and we have the worst governance. And Hong Kong people are being deceived time and again. There are so many residential, hotel, and luxury homes at West Kowloon. Why can't you sell them all off so that you can repay our taxpayers? P.S. Chairman, for the residential and office developments were to be sold in our original plan, but at the end of last year, EXCO decided to entrust the development rights to WKCDA so that they have enough resources to complete the music theater, great theater, and musical theater in phase 3, and so that WKCDA would make enough in operating costs to maintain their operation. P.S. Even if you are deceiving people, you should be honest. How much do you expect to make if you sell off the properties? At the beginning of this year at LegCo, we explained that the main art and cultural facilities for phase 3 would cost about $11.7 billion. So if you sell off the properties, you can make about $100 billion. So there's a difference of $89 billion. We have not made such assessments. Why aren't you conducting any assessments? This is significant. Dr. Fernando Cheung. Second round, 3 minutes. Chairman, we have to put up with such piecemeal approach. So how much do our taxpayers have to pay? There's no way we can see the big picture in terms of the budget overrun. In 2008, we granted $21.6 billion for the entire West Kowloon Cultural District. And subsequently, there were budget overruns. And the government had to pay for the integrated basement. The original basement was smaller, and now it has been expanded substantially, and we are now at phase 2. The 2 phases will amount to more than $6 billion. The entire integrated basement will cost about $23 billion, and we might see further overruns. The $21.6 billion is enough to pay for phase 1 and part of phase 2. And for phase 3, it will cost $11.7 billion, but we don't know whether there would be any overruns. P.S. Can you give us an overall figure for the entire integrated basement together with all facilities on the ground? Now, we are talking about the cultural facilities, of course. What will be the total cost? Give us a number. So the public would know how much they have to pay for the WKCD. When you answered Dr. K. Kwok's question, you said you do not know how much the residential and commercial land would be worth. I hope you can do some math. P.S. Chairman, I talked about the $21.6 billion funding in 2008. $15.9 billion were earmarked for arts and culture facilities. $15.9 billion is enough to pay for phase 1 and some facilities in phase 2, and they would not be enough to cover the black box theaters. For the phase 3 facilities, including music theater, great theater, musical theater, and medium theater, as well as one black box, another $11.7 billion would be needed. What about the integrated basement? By 2020, if we build it in one go, the preliminary estimate would be $23 billion, according to 2014 estimates. Mr. Nathan Law, fourth round, 1 minute. Chairman, and the accounts are so confusing. A lot of crucial figures could not be provided. Members asked about the development rights at WKCD and the superstructure developments. You must produce figures. If EXCO decided that the cost will cover phase 3 as well as future operation costs, they must come up with figures. If you have no, if you do not know both the estimated revenue and costs, how can you balance the books? The funds we are seeking is for the integrated basement, and it is a public works project. As for the total costs of the WKCD, apart from the $21.6 billion, another $11.7 billion would be required for phase 3, and there are other RDE facilities not included in the $21.7 billion. So what would be the total cost? We will entrust that to developers via BOT. We are yet to conduct tendering, so we cannot give estimates. Can you give us some estimates? We do not have such figures today. So when would those figures be ready? Should we come back for another, set aside another date for the next meeting? For questions about the entire WKCD projects, they have been redundant. Some questions have been answered, some not. If you dwell on the same questions, you are going to receive the same answers. Chairman, if we do not solve these questions, we cannot grant the money. We do not know how much revenue will be generated at West Kowloon. The development rights amount to $100 billion, and your projection is $100 billion. The PS might say I'm wrong. But you know the estimated cost, but you don't know the estimated revenue. But yet you are telling us that you can balance the books. This is illogical. If you can't show us the figures, how would we know whether the funding granted would be justified? If the development rights can cover everything, we can save money for the taxpayers. You have no estimated revenue for the RD facilities. What about the development rights? How did EXCO arrive at their decision? On what basis? You might cite confidentiality, but you should have provided the figures to them. Can you show us the figures? P.S. In January, we explained our enhanced financial arrangement and we offered some rough figures. Before we signed the entrustment agreement with WKCDA, in delineating the government and WKCDA's responsibilities, we promised to explain to the Joint Subcommittee at EXCO. There was a lot of commercially sensitive information since we have to take out tendering. We have to think of ways to explain to EXCO the assumptions and development parameters without disclosing sensitive information. Well, if I'm correct, you have such figures, but you cannot give the estimates because the information was sensitive. We have rough estimates already. Can you show us these rough estimates? We cannot provide the information at this stage. So come back for the funding when you can show us the information. At the next financial year, we will explain the details. They should come back for funds when they can provide the information. I might move a motion to adjourn. Mr. Ray Chan, fourth round, 1 minute. When I first spoke, I made it clear that there's no way we can monitor West Kowloon. And a lot of members are not in the know. The plans you showed us were too simple for the cross-sectional plan. Why are you showing us the B1 level for the auxiliary facilities or ancillary facilities? What are you referring to? And why aren't there cross-sectional plans for other floors or levels? Can you show us the vehicular access or traffic directions, etc.? Ms. Fang? Thank you. Thank you very much for the question. On page 1 of the enclosure, we want to show the underground road. And on page 2 of the enclosure, we have provided cross-sectional plans, including ground level B1M, B1, and B2. And in enclosure 2, there are cross-sectional plans. And we also show the connectivity. So we show different road sections and different levels. The green area denotes ancillary facilities. So those are machinery rooms, ventilation openings to support the operation of the basement. My question is, can you provide similar plans for other levels? Mr. Ray Chan requests other plans. Sure, we can provide the plans after the meeting. Next, Ms. Tanya Chen, 6th round, 1 minute. Chairman, how many trees will there be at West Kowloon? P.S. Can you provide any information? Can the WKCDA take that question, please?
Jeremy,
Jeremy, can you take that question?
If I can come back on that question, I need to need a final answer.
我諗今日會上可能未必可以提供到咁詳細資料。
Perhaps some information details could not be provided at this meeting. I asked this question because I said right from the start they kept telling us about the Foster proposal, but the current plan is very different from Foster's plan, and it is there have been substantial changes since 2008. There used to be 17 art and culture facilities, and the number was cut down. Now you are coming back with the same excuse for money, and you have been repeating the same things. In 2008, you came up with an estimate as well as the land sale revenue. Do you know how much it would amount to? You raised the cap, and for hotel, residential, and office developments, more than 360,000 square meters of land are available, and 170,000 square meters is for residential uses. We are talking about dozens of tens of billions of dollars for grade 8 offices, and we are talking about another few dozen $1 billion. So we are coming to almost $100 billion. Well, I don't understand. I've been expecting art and culture facilities for years and years, but if we invest in all our resources on one project, it's just unfair. Ms. Chan, well, I've exercised a lot of discretion. I've allowed you a lot of time. But I'd like to remind members that we are talking about the integrated basement. If we feel that the discussions are relevant, I can only say that the PWSC has to focus on our responsibility. We cannot, well, even though members might not like the PS's reply, we must still focus on the integrated basement.
And further, this may be the last meeting of the Public Works Committee for this LegCo year. So we will have to think about timing as well, how we are going to handle this particular item. I see people in the queue. Yu Chung-yi, 6th round, 1 minute. Thank you, Chair. Just now, you already admitted to the balanced tendering work or the tendering process. Now, I believe that the amount involved will be over $10 million, and you also admitted that the government did not administer the tendering process, but it was the West Kowloon Authority, so they used a standard contract for so doing. Now, my question is, for this particular item that you're coming to the LegCo today, this entrusted arrangement for the West Kowloon Authority, what is the situation? Is it that there will be a separate contract where there will be this balanced tendering process that you enter into with West Kowloon? Well, Mr. Chair, if I can just explain. In fact, at the design stage, it had already included the tendering expenses. So that was even included in the design stage. Now, as for the commencement of works, when we talk about the internal management fee, this is included in this round of funding application. Mr. Chair, so you're saying for the 30th of June tendering process, the expenses concerned was actually included in the design stage? Is that what you're saying? Yes, that understanding is correct. Law Kun Chung, let me see. Law Kun Chung, second round, 3 minutes. Thank you, Chair. Concerning the entire West Kowloon development, the Chair just now said that we should focus on the basement discussion today, but that is not right. because the government is truncating or coming piecemeal for funding to the Letcho. Now, for the facilities in West Kowloon, if you say that you need the basement in order to link up all the facilities and for the West Kowloon to be functional at all, then I think it is still unfair that we use the West Kowloon framework, the entire framework, as a basis for approval, and then approve these projects piecemeal, including this basement project. I urge the government not to do so, not to come bit by bit for funding approval, and do not come up with an excuse by saying that the basement project is crucial to the operation of West Kowloon Cultural District, and that is, therefore, it is part and parcel of the West Kowloon development. Do not use that kind of argument. Now, I see a breakdown here of all the facilities. Now, do you have an updated version of this breakdown, including the income? Well, Mr. Chair, today we've come for the 3.6 billion funding, and there is a breakdown for that. But if Mr. Law is referring to the breakdown for the West Kowloon District, well, then there will be another meeting at LegCo, which will be responsible for this, and that will come at a future date, not at this meeting, though. Now, I'm looking at this is a 2008 document, and it is very detailed in its breakdown. And only through this kind of detailed breakdown will we know where the money goes, to which projects or items. Mr. Law, I do not know what you're referring to. There is a breakdown for the basement project that we are discussing today. Well, that's fine, Mr. Chair. I may not have that document here today. What I want to clarify is whether the government can commit to the following, and that is the income from the development rights. When will it be forthcoming? Because the government has a share in that kind of income. And it was actually back then when West Kowloon didn't have the funding that the government had to step in to develop the West Kowloon area. And what about the income? What is the income estimate? Mr. Law, I have to remind you, I understand that we are all concerned about the progress and funding of West Kowloon, but we cannot discuss all these detailed issues concerning West Kowloon in today's meeting. We are a Public Works Committee meeting concerned with the basement of the West Kowloon project. And this project pertains to public works, and it is inevitable that at different stages there will be different items of public works coming to the LegCo for discussion, and it is very difficult to, at one go, propose or come up with all the public works items. In construction, this is improbable. We have a group, a panel, responsible for West Kowloon as an entire project, the scrutiny of that. So I urge members to focus on public works. Our committee has our own terms of reference as devolved from the Finance Committee. If you have other issues you want to bring up, you should bring up at the relevant committee and also at the overall committee of the LegCo. This is in our rules. Helena Wong. Mr. Chair, what you said just now is very unilateral. If the government thinks like you do, that they can come up piecemeal, then we would not have spent so much time today, this morning, and still not be able to come to a conclusion. Because when we discuss this item, we cannot just look at basement 3A or this $3.6 billion, whether we approve it or not. We, of course, understand that the basement adjacent is being built already, and of course we will have to go ahead with the building of this basement that we have on hand here. And of course we know that the superstructure will have to stand on the basement, and we will have to go ahead with the basement. But what problem we have here is that we do not have a full picture. Of course, we know that a few or billions of dollars will have to be spent on the superstructure, basement, etc. But the income from the superstructure would be given over to the West Kowloon Authority for their ongoing function. But we do not know the BOT details, what's in the BOT, what's in the contract. This very valuable piece of land, apart from artistic and cultural usage, we also want to know what the income generated would be and how much would come back to the treasury of the Hong Kong government to cover the tens of billions of dollars spent before. And this kind of questioning is logical and reasonable. And in the West Kowloon Committee, we have asked similar questions, but on the other hand, we did not know how the BOT is going to proceed. Well, for the DBO of Kai Tak Sports Ground, we have discussed the capping of the profits and how the income would come back to the government, even though it was not very clear, but at least there were some numbers mentioned. But this is not true for West Kowloon. It seems that after the approval of a kind of budget, it is all down to trust now. If everything is down to trust vis-à-vis the government, the Legislative Council might as well fold up. Mr. Chair, you may be anxious that we're using so much time on this item, but despite rounds of asking, we have not been getting answers. Can we urge that before the Finance Committee, at least you have a ballpark description? Mr. Chair, we have a goal, and that is by the end of this year, we will come back again to discuss and tell you the details of the financial arrangement. And the reason why we need time is because the West Kowloon Authority need to adjust all the details concerning the contract, the BOT term in years, how much will be the sharing of West Kowloon Authority, and what the contractors will have to build for West Kowloon. And these contracts are attractive in different ways for the market. And we have to make sure that they are attractive to the market before anyone would come forth and bid for the projects. And also, for the office buildings, the government will have an upfront payment. And how much is that going to be? We will have to calculate. And that's why we need time until the end of the year so that there will be meaningful discussion by the joint group. Now, Chair, I heard that the calculations have yet to be done, and after that you will be able to tell us how much will be the share for the Hong Kong government due the treasury of the Hong Kong government. And you will provide that number another time. Now, as for the BOT, the construction, and that is all the superstructure, hotel, restaurants, offices, residential blocks, etc., that amount, does it have to come through the Public Works Committee again? Secretary? Mr. Chair, the import is for the developer to take up that responsibility, and after the BOT period to hand it back over to the authority. So the developer will have to be all responsible, and the authority does not have to use its resources to do this. So Ms. Helena Wong's question was whether this will have to come back to this committee. No, it will not, because it is not public money. Right, but we will come back to this committee to explain the long-term development of West Kowloon and also all the monetary arrangements concerned. So this BOT financial arrangement is not participated in by the Hong Kong government. Well, I think this is outside of the terms of reference of the Public Works Committee here. We have to look at Rule 37 of the which governs our discussion. Issues that are wider and policy in nature is not within the terms of reference of this committee. Mr. Chair, in discussing this project, we cannot just focus on how much materials will be used, how many staff, etc. We will have to think in broader terms with regard to West Kowloon project and also where the money will come from. Now, there is an impasse, and that is we do not know whether or how the basement has become fully funded by the government in its construction. If the source of funding for a project is not to be discussed as we discuss the project, then I don't know how we can work on that basis. I mean, there is clearly a sum, but the Secretary is saying because of commercial confidentiality or secret, we cannot be disclosed, that sum cannot be disclosed. Well, actually, I want this sum. Before we further our discussion, I move that we adjourn this discussion. Now, according to Rule 33, Mr. Law Kun Chung is proposing that the paper be retracted and we adjourn the discussion of this item. Now, Mr. Chair, I know, yes, we have other items for this committee, and I know that for some of the items, members are in support of. That's why I'm not motioning for an adjournment of the meeting, but only for this item, because since 2008, since the approval, we have heard that the West Kowloon Authority is a kingdom unto its own, that it is responsible to no one. Now, and in the past, they've come up piecemeal for funding. There is a background to it for this basement. In fact, the government and the authority should both together foot the bill for the basement construction. But now only the government is responsible for footing the bill. Then we have to ask whether this is reasonable from the point of view of West Kowloon's income and expenditure. In fact, there should be a sum. There should be a clear amount. The Executive Council would know, but we do not. And we are completely at a loss as to the West Kowloon Authority. There were some huge numbers, and we do not know how that is going to be shared, for example, income to be shared with the government. And we know that this basement is hugely expensive. Now, we are not trying to stop the entire project, but we are saying to the West Kowloon, if you're not clear with your information, do not look for public funding. You have the money and you have the development rights and you can have the tenders and you can make money. And we need to know what all these amounts are before we can approve of public money to be spent on West Kowloon. Now, if you say the development rights are all due the West Kowloon, then at least there should be some amounts or numbers released to the LegCo and to the public before we can consider the approval of these public funds to be used on West Kowloon. I mean, otherwise it is not acceptable and it is not fair. So my discussion, I would think the focus is whether the government should be footing this bill for the basement. even if the government does not take it upon itself, the West Kowloon will have money to do so. And there had been so many times of injection in the past, or funding injection in the past. I mean, if the number's not forthcoming, let's discuss it when they are available. Kwakaki? For West Kowloon, at the point of reclamation, it was said that there will be a park bigger than the Victoria Park in West Kowloon. And after that, the government changed its mind and said that it will now be a cultural district. So that was the first time the government cheated the people of Hong Kong. And in 2008, I was here in the LegCo, and the then FS, Mr. Tang, said that we should trust the government. And I remember I was very clear, and we asked detailed questions, and they swore that they will not come back to the LegCo or Hong Kong for further funding. And then, not too long after, a year after, there was a spaceman project added to it. And you will remember at the time when we objected to the tendering process. We objected to giving it over to a developer. But it is worse off now. We are asking for the public to come up with a white elephant basement, which is colossal in construction cost. And the superstructure, the hotels, the residential blocks, are all to be handed over to the developer. I mean, that is gross in injustice. The taxpayers have their purses dipped into by the government in building these infrastructural projects, and what is most valuable are given over to the developers. I don't know what the Secretary was talking about in saying that the contracts will have to be attractive to the market. What are you talking about? This is valuable land. This is valuable. The developers will be flocking to the contract. I mean, it is the government is taking up all the bones while the developers get all the meat. And at the end of the day, it is the lowly citizens of Hong Kong who gets to foot the bill. And a lot of money is flowing out from the pockets that should be taking care of medication, taking care of the old people. But the money is flowing out from those pockets. They are flowing to the developers, the big developers, the property developers. Isn't this great? We're talking about millions of dollars per square kilometer.
And we provide a basement. We do everything to facilitate the infrastructure. It's a great deal for them. Mr. Chu Hoi-dik, I have two major reasons for supporting this adjournment motion. This may be the last PWSC meeting before we have the summer recess. There are 12 items on the agenda. The second, third, 6th, 7th, 8th, 9th, and 12th are not controversial and would take little time to approve. And now we have spent 6 hours on WKCD. What about the drainage project? What about the desalination plant that we've been talking about for a long time? I think even the pro-establishment members should support this adjournment motion so that we can deal with the 8 or 9 uncontroversial items on the agenda, and there's no need to have a division for those items. Secondly, back to this item itself, we're talking about $3.6 billion, as Mr. Nathan Law has said. It's important to do what Mr. Law has said. That is, we have to find out whether WKCDA can afford to pay this sum, $3.6 billion, because they have been given the BOT development rights by EXCO. Whether the proceeds from that side can cover this particular basement project cost. And even the permanent secretary cannot tell us the exact estimate. The 23 billion was the ballpark guesstimate in 2014. And they are saying that they would come back to give us an account later. So I think we should consider this item in conjunction with the other matters that would be the subject of a future briefing. Well, this is very similar to the problems with MTRCL. The MTRCL is given the property development right on top of their stations. And every time the MTRCL will make a bigger profit through property development than previously projected. And this is happening to WKCDA as well. So we should support the adjournment motion. Mr. Leung Kwok Hong, I hope, apart from the expect that we have in attendance, you please all read that refer to the Analects by Confucius. It's said that don't let people know all the truth, and they are just there to take orders from the powers that be. You have not been able to tell us anything concrete. Every time when you attend the subcommittee meeting on WKCD, you'll be talking about all these issues all the time. And you have been making changes time and again. And now we are told that WKCDA doesn't have the money to build all the cultural facilities, and therefore we need to help them. This is why the government is willing to help them financially. And then under the Foster and Partners design, you want to have better design, a better facility which is underground, the road is underground. And it was said that the cost will be shared 50-50. And now you have come back. We have done the design. Please don't object. Why all the objections at this stage? Well, many members here were not members back in 2008. Do you think this is just an ATM for the government? At that time, you were very adamant in insisting that the funding will be sufficient. And the pro-establishment members endorsed that. So they acted like a rubber stamp once, and now you have come back to ask for more money. The pro-establishment members here in the council now were nowhere to be seen back then. Well, don't just put up a show. Please check the records. Know a bit about the background. I will give you a list. I want to do it slowly. I'll give you a list of questions. Answer all the questions first before I give you the money. Don't say that you answer the questions after the money is approved. Ms. Tanya Chan. I know the Permanent Secretary has been working hard. She has been doing her homework, and she is handling problems created by the previous government. At that time, The Civic Party voted against the application for $21.6 billion. Mr. Leung said that the government factored in 2% inflation, and he said that that's an underestimation. 2% inflation. Look at how in construction costs have been increasing. In 2013, the CE told us that construction costs compared with the 2008 levels is a 102%. In 2006, the increase in the cost of building M+ has gone up by 102%. I understand that the Express Rail link project has been causing delays. We have a subcommittee to monitor the WKCD. We have asked questions on the financial arrangement a lot of times. As a member of the WKCDA, the chairman, you should ask the WKCDA to be more transparent and accountable. At first, it was said that the cost of the basement would be apportioned because there would be and it said that the government might be able to recoup some of the costs of building the basement because the land on top will be auctioned off. But now the government is going to foot the entire bill, and then the WKCDA will be entrusted. So we have to give them $60 million additionally. We have granted them the development rights already. And the WKCDA has not been able to tell us clearly what residential projects will be done on a BOT basis. I've tried to check, and I can only find some similar projects in Bangladesh. And if you compare the investment in software, that is the training of personnel, it's just a very small proportion compared with what they did for hardware. Mr. Chan Chi-chin, I support this motion moved by Mr. Law. This is for a very pragmatic reason. We've only got 3 hours left, and this is the last PWSC meeting before the summer recess. Well, I'm not as picky as Mr. Law. I have no strong views about the remaining items on the agenda. If we can approve 3 or 4 items in the remaining 3 hours, and if no division is claimed, we can help with the progress of PWSC business very much. I particularly want to approve the one on the desalination plant. And even if we we endorse this, the Finance Committee might not be able to grant the approval in time because there's another proposal from the current CE, the $5 billion for education, and that particular application may jump the queue. It said that the tenders have been received with a validity period of 12 months, so we still have time. We would like to know how much will be needed for this integrated basement and the related public infrastructure works. The Permanent Secretary can only give us rough estimates that they did in 2014 on the basis of completion in 2020. Have you tried to come up with another estimate when you submitted this application for $3.6 billion? The last one was did in 2014. Why don't you do it again now? Although it's not 100% accurate, at least you can tell us what your current estimate is. If it's not 2020, it may not be 23 billion, it may be something else, but you have to tell us before we consider whether we should support this item. And also the 2A, 2B, 2C projects are related. Because they are short of money, the government takes up this build for the basement. And remember back then, Mr. James Tin said it would be $50 billion, and I said it could well be $100 billion for the entire project. Of course, we need to provide the funding because the road is already half built. Mr. Chu Hoi-taek asked the authority to foot the bill. I don't think this is a realistic way forward because the promise has been made that the road will be built for the authority, but we need more information. Dr. Fernando Zhang, I support this German motion. This item has given rise to so many questions. If we look at the current set of figures, well, in 2008, we approved in one lump sum the $21.6 billion, and according to the Permanent Secretary, the integrated basement would need additionally, and as an estimate, $23 billion on the basis of 2014, of the projection in 2014, and then phase 3. And then phase 2, and then we have to take care of the phase 2 facilities, and then they need to carry out certain other projects, food and beverage, hotel, and so on. So if we take in all these together, it's a $56.3 billion. The original estimate of is $21.6 billion. There will be a budget overrun of $34.7 billion, or 2.6 times the original budget. So this council is like an ATM to them. We are pouring money, tens of billions of dollars. And even if we just look at the budget overrun figure, it's more than $30 billion. When we want to have more the elderly homes, when we want to redevelop an old hospital, it's a very difficult process. No money, we're told, or no land for public rental housing. But for such projects, they're willing to pour whatever amount of money that is going to be needed. And then we have to give them the development rights for residential buildings, for retail and commercial facilities. So how much, in terms of public resource, are we paying in order to enable the government to have faith? And how many of these facilities will be accessible by the grassroots? How many Hong Kong people will benefit from those high-class facilities and the major venues? How many of these venues and cultural facilities will be accessible by people living in Tin Shui Wai or in subdivided units in Sham Shui Po? We're talking about tens of billions of dollars here, Mr. Chairman. Dr. Everett Yu. Well, we need more information on the 29th of May. Members asked questions about the arrangement on emergency evacuations, and we have not been able to get any answers. And I've just heard that some time ago something happened. I think it was the PWSC item in 2016, paper number items 30. That there will be a cost for the tendering exercise in respect of 3B. I think it would be better that we sort things out outside the PWSC meeting. And I read out this sentence.
In-house management cost to be payable to WKCD in relation to these works. 清楚寫明呢
So it's clearly stated that the government did not want to provide to the WKCDA any internal management fee. So, according to this past paper, no such fee, management fee, was suggested. And $37.9 billion would be for the consultancy fee in respect of the tendering exercise. But when the funding was approved, you did not engage any consultant, and then you gave the tendering right to WKCDA. The chances are that you have violated the WTO procurement guidelines. What about your internal procurement rules? Was there an open process? And this is against the intent in paragraph 17 of that previous of that past paper, and then which talks about no management fee for WKCDA. So that's why I think we should wait. Mr. Chen Hangban, Mr. Leung Kok-hong just criticized you quoting the Analects. Which also refers to the bravery without ethical standards is treacherous. So I don't think Mr. Leung Kok-hong should criticize the chairman. And every time when we reach a stage like this, they would move an adjournment motion. They want to have more information and papers. I think we should keep asking questions to get additional information. If we don't do this, the information provided by the government may not be as clearly as you want. If you say information is insufficient and the questions have not been answered, I believe the questions can be put at the Finance Committee stage. So usually, at this stage, they will ask for an adjournment so that the items behind this one can be considered. They will always say this.
Normally, for the later items on the agenda, normally they could be processed. But if we want to delay matters, then some papers could never be passed. After moving a motion to adjourn proceedings for the item, maybe they would try to adjourn the meetings, and we have seen plenty of examples in recent years. At the PWSC, for the next item, we will deal with the dry weather flow interceptor at Shun Wan, and we also have to deal with the installation of lifts on slopes. We are coming to the end of the season. If the projects cannot be passed at PWSC, they would have to wait even longer before being discussed at the FC. And the papers have been shared a long time ago. So if you have questions, you could submit the questions ahead of time. This is if you suddenly put them questions or ask them the number of trees, and they might not have time to prepare answers. So I suggest members to file your questions sooner so that the government could prepare. If you want to adjourn discussions of items, then I think it would be a waste of time. Mr. Wen Yang, 3 minutes. Chairman, I think Mr. Chan Pan is being misleading. He said we asked about the number of trees, but we were actually asking about the amounts of money. And the $21 billion was the 2014 estimate. So didn't the government prepare the 2017 estimate? So Mr. Chan Pan is not being fair. Meanwhile, he said we are trying to adjourn discussions in the past. But in the past, for controversial projects, we had to spend a lot of effort to get the information we wanted. So that is the biggest headache for us. Mr. Chen said we have been resorting to procedures and we were trying to stand in the way for the past. So can you tell us which projects could not be passed before? That said, some items on the agenda should have been brought forward because they are less controversial. I'm not sure if the pro-establishment can try to convince the government to rejuggle the agenda. And as Ms. Eddie Chu said, you can take a look at our agenda. The next item is about the Drainage Services Department, and we would unreservedly support it. And for the subsequent items, the reprovisioning of the former CFA court building for the Caroline Hill Road site, members might have something to say. So the subsequent items up to item 5 are relatively uncontroversial. So the ESC is doing a good job in bringing forward the less controversial items, and we could see the positive results. I am not sure about the intention of the government in insisting with the agenda. That's what I want to say. Mr. Jeremy Tam, 3 minutes. Thank you. Members have have voiced out their concerns on how much more we have to invest. You are just coming back for a small fund, but when you look at the plan, the basement is very big. If you are seeking funds, why don't you manage everything in one go instead of coming back for bits and pieces every time? Or are you concerned that the if you come back for in one go, the funds would be substantial? That's why you are chopping up the project. As we said, we support these art and culture facilities, but is the WKCD still what it was in day one? Now, we can talk about that another time. If we grant the integrated basement, if you come back for more funds, can I object to it next time? You need to provide for facilities. When you build the Chiang Ma Bridge, would you just come back for? Would you seek funds for 2 pillars, and the next time you would come back for other parts of the bridge? So that's why I'm surprised that the government is trying to chop up the project. Well, we are not talking about dozens of billions of dollars, and now you are coming for a few $billions each time. So what would be the total cost? For even if you have budget overruns, you can just tell us how much you need. It doesn't matter. And this is better than coming for funds all the time. We thought that $21.6 billion would be enough, and the WKCD would be self-financing. So now the total cost will likely exceed $21.6 billion. If we talk about budget overruns, it's the overrun is serious. Mr. Siu Ka-chun, 3 minutes. I support Nathan Law's motion, and I agree with Ms. Tanya Chen that we do not know how the WKCD would end. We don't know what has been discussed, and we don't know how much would this cost or how much more we have to pay. How many more meetings do we need? And you kept telling us that you have started it, so we must continue. Within the past year, we have heard these things so many times. On the 1st of June, the Chief Secretary, Mr. Matthew Cheung, met the Democrats. He wanted us to pass this as soon as possible. And we asked whether he can bring forward the less controversial items, or can we have one non-controversial item followed by another controversial item. We don't want to stand in the way of some livelihood projects. We support the majority of the subsequent items. You are trying to test our resolve by sticking with the arrangement. So perhaps you know you have the support of the pro-establishment camp. That's why you are doing such things. So we can only support Mr. Nathan Law's motion to adjourn discussions for the item. Mrs. Carrie Lam said today that Hong Kong people needs hope, and wounds have to be healed. We hope the officials can consider what the new CE said. We need hope, and wounds have to be healed. Such piecemeal fund applications would not give us any hope, and it would not heal wounds. It would do the opposite. Mr. Roy Kwong, 3 minutes. The controversy lies in the fact that the government is not fulfilling its promises. In 2008, the government said that the parking lots would be managed by WKCD, and now the government is taking up the job. And the government said it's natural for them to take up the basement. So Hong Kong people are not convinced. And in 2008, well, I'm not sure why the government is being so generous with the taxpayers' money. You made a promise that the responsibility would be shared with WKCDA. Why are you so casually applying for funds at the PWSC? You kept telling us that you have started the project and you must continue. The government must explain why they are going back on their promises or words. You might say that the actual design has changed, and that's why the government is seeking extra funds, and there's no end to that. If we put up with you, what will happen in the future? Next time you might come up with a different plan, and you might seek more money. So who is to blame? You promised to share the responsibility with the authority, so you have to explain yourselves. The government should not shoulder the entire burden. It's not your money, director or project manager. You are spending taxpayers' money. As legislators, we have to get to the bottom of this. In 2008, you said the public car park would be taken up by the WKCDA, and now it's being built by the government. The government came up with a series of reasons, but they are not convincing. This is about sharing the costs. If you cannot explain yourselves, we have a lot of other items which are not controversial on the agenda. For an earlier item about fire services facilities, we only spent 3 minutes and we passed the item. It was record-breaking. It proved that we are not trying to drag on without purpose. So I hope you should examine the issue and come back to us later. Does any other member wish to speak on this motion to adjourn the discussion of the item? Permanent Secretary. Some members asked whether we can choose not to grant the funds or apply for the funds now and ask WKCDA to pay upfront. This is difficult because the $21.6 billion for construction of facilities for the about $10 billion will be spent on M+, Lyric Theatre, etc. There won't be spare resources for the basement. And there's an underground road, which is a public work. The $21.6 billion given to West Kowloon could not be spent on public works because that would be against the scope approved by the Finance Committee. So it cannot be used to pay for the underground road. So we cannot do what members suggested. Mr. Nathan Law, you have a minute. The PS cited their concerns, but they are not getting to the bottom of the problem, and that is the revenue from the development rights. You said the $21.6 billion cannot cover the cost. What about the development rights or the revenue? We are not trying to stand in the way, but you have to give us clearer accounts. We have dwelled on this for a very long time. Some members have been monitoring the progress since 2008, and they are still confused. If the pro-establishment camp feels that this is okay, then just cast your support for the project, and we can move on. And with more information, I think the discussions would be much smoother. I will put the motion to the vote. We will adjourn discussions on PWSC brackets 2017 to 18, number 12. Those in favor, please raise your hands. Is a division claimed? Mr. Ben Chen. The bell will be rung for 5 minutes.
我諗加會嘅機會好少，因為咧就財務委員會都要加會。大家都知道咧，公務小組通過嘅項目之中咧，有好多個咧都。
For our committee, we know that we have a list of items which have still not been discussed, and I don't think there is any opportunity. There is no time slot for another meeting, nor the Finance Committee. I don't think there's any time slot. Law Kun Chong has the following motion, and that is to adjourn the discussion of this item. This is the motion we're dealing with now. Now, please, would you please cast your vote? And please check your vote. Voting concluded. This is the result. 38 present, yes 12, no 20, abstention 5. This motion is not carried. We continue with the discussion. The computer will reveal who is to speak next. Yes, the next one is Dr. Kwok Ha-ki, and then Chan Chiu Hong, and then Leung Kwok Hong. Anybody else who would want to speak? In the afternoon, we have another 2 hours of meeting for this committee. So that is to say, we have but 2 hours and a little bit more for the duration of the rest of the committee meeting. Would you please, for or against the item? We would want to be able to deal with this item, especially for those members who have not spoken up yet. You have 4 minutes for your first round of speaking, and these are the few who are on the queue, as mentioned just now. Now, because the questions just now were very repetitive, and there had been 64-member time of speaking, and there was a lot of repetition in terms of content, and I urge you not to repeat yourselves in your next round of questioning. Chan Chiu Hong. Mr. Chair, some questions were not fully answered. First of all, this basement, there are 5 zones to it. We are talking about the Zone 2 with 3.6 billion, and then there was this 2-point-something billion, altogether over 6 billion. But the basement is actually all connected, isn't it? All the roads, all the sewer, all the machinery plants, etc., are all connected, and they're also somehow connected to the what's above ground as well. Well, before the next Finance Committee meeting, can the government give us an overall budget, please? Mr. Chair, I've said this many times actually. For the 2A, 2B, 2C budgets, the first instance we can come up with a budget for your information is first quarter of 2019. If it can be any earlier than that, we will come to the LegCo ASAP. Now, Mr. Chair, because it is about roadways and traffic arrangement, it is unimaginable that we have not designed for the other zones yet. It is not possible that what connects up to the border of 3B, Zone 3B, is not known. Well, Chair, because of 2A to 2C, 2A to B, 2C, this is still work site of the express rail. So we do not have a budget or an estimate. But for 3B and C, at the last round of coming to the LegCo for funding approval, that's 3A to 3B, it was asked whether, without 2A, B, and C, whether 3A and 3B can function independently. Well, the answer was affirmative. Well, if that is the case, can you give us the contingency plan? Because as far as I can see for 3B, the 2 exits, one connects to 3A, the other to 2B and 2C, and then onward to 2A. please respond. Mrs. Lee will respond to that question. Mrs. Lee, please. Now, concerning the question, it is about the design of the entire road. If you look at the appendix, the diagram, you will see the green line. The green line is a preliminary design. And for 3A, last time when we came for funding, section by section, it was 140 meters for that road section. And then after entering the road, the vehicle will have to go through a roundabout and come back out again. As for 3B zone, you see that where it joins up to zone 2, the road will also go via a roundabout and come back out again. So if you ask whether there is only one exit, at this stage in time, yes, there is only one exit. Chan Chi-yun has raised 4 motions, and the Secretary is helping to look through them. And concerning 32A motions, if you have any more of them, would you please propose them as soon as possible? Because this afternoon at 5 o'clock, we will have 2 hours of further meeting. And I hope before 4 p.m., if you have any 32A motions, please propose them before then and early. I know through 32A you want to make your opinions known, and I will carefully go through them. Please be cooperative, because if this is the last meeting before the summer vacation, we would want to use our time wisely. Chu Hoi-tik, 5th round, 1 minute. Thank you, Chair. The Secretary just now mentioned that West Kowloon, or this 3 billion plus, has to be footed by the West Kowloon Authority, has to be footed by the government and not the authority, because the latter has run out of money. So is there a possibility of the following arrangement? That is to say, we foot the bill now, and in the future, through sale of land, BOT, what have you, where there is revenue coming into the authority at a future date, that this basement construction cost can be reimbursed to the government. Is it possible to have this new arrangement? Mr. Chair, actually, in our financial arrangement, we are not giving the authority all development rights. There are 2 situations where we will get reimbursed and also split of revenue. First of all, where the commercial facilities, offices, residential, that is to say, service apartments, we request the West Kowloon District in giving us a early stage funding disbursement, and after that there will be a splitting of the revenue from those facilities. So through that method, we will be able to recuperate some of the funding, and that is with the over 2 billion that we have provided, there can be certain recuperation. What is the timing, please? Well, Mr. Chair, at the time of tendering of the developer, they will have to pay up to the government right then and there. And then there will be a splitting between the developer and the authority. And after that, there will be a splitting between the government and the authority. All these will be written into the contract. Can the BOT cover all this expenditure for the 3 billion plus and more? I cannot make that commitment now, but right. Mr. Chan Chi-chun, this basement, when will it commence service? Will it commence service in stages, or after all the facilities have all been up and running? I'm looking at the diagram. I still do not know how one gets into the basement and where one goes in, where one goes out. Can there be supplementary information or diagrams? Mrs. Lee would answer the question. Now, first of all, how the road leads into the basement. We look at Appendix 1. The green line is the alignment of the basement road, and at 3A you see an exit. And that would be the main entrance and exit in the future. Last time when we got the funding to construct the U-shaped overground road, that leads to this particular road. And there are the exit and entrance both go through this basement road. Chun Chiu-hong, fourth round, 1 minute. Mr. Chair, concerning 2A, 2B, and 2C, the basement perhaps will not be constructed. And if that is the case, and 3A, 3B will independently function. And there is this road, which is very curious, because you, of course, would estimate the traffic load on the road. And if you do that estimate or evaluation, you would know what is the width of the road, how many carriageways, what is the exit and the entrance, and thereby calculate the traffic load. So I'm at a loss as to whether you are thinking that this will be built or not built, and you do not have the budget for the additional zones or facilities because it is express rail. I do not see the logic. Mr. Chair, I want to reiterate, we're not saying that we will not go ahead with the construction. I was just explaining. In the past LegCo meeting, there was a question raised saying that 3A, 3B, would it be independently functioning without 2A, B, and C? So, from the Xichu Center all the way through, the basements will be connected. Perhaps Mr. Pan can answer the question about the technicality. Thank you for the question. Concerning West Kowloon basement, at the time, we already understood that this project will be staged in its construction, and that's why we have come to the LegCo in a staged manner for funding. First of all, to clarify that point. Secondly, on traffic, the West Kowloon Authority has done a traffic assessment and also take into consideration that this is a staged approach and the roads will be able to handle the traffic load at that given point of time. It will not happen that the roads will not be able to sustain the traffic at that stage. Well, Mr. Chair, that's my point. If that is the case, then there should be a budget. Well, the Secretary had mentioned for the budget that will be forthcoming, but not at this point. It's not available. Mr. Chair, I do not understand. Why is that? If they already have the planning and the design, why would the budget be not available? Well, I cannot allow you to ask that question repeatedly. The question had been answered. Leung Kwok-hong, round 7, 1 minute. All right. Mr. Chair, why build the basement if Zone 3 will not be built? Are you assuming that you will have the budget to build it? Now you're saying that there is problem with Zone 3's financing. Isn't this a paradox? I mean, if the two things should go hand in hand, and you're saying that if you build the superstructure, you need what goes under it, underground, and now you're saying that the superstructure will have to be built, and therefore the basement will have to be built. I mean, Xi Jinping, the premier, said that after Suzhou, there will be no boat transport, meaning don't miss the chance. Are you saying that to us now? You're quick to adopt, isn't it? Where do you get the funding for the third batch? Well, Mr. Chair, I understand Mr. Leung Kwok-hong, he must be referring to the third batch of cultural facilities, I think. well, there will be sufficient resources to build the third batch of cultural facilities. In fact, that answer had been repeated many times. Mr. Leung, please pay attention. Mr. Yu Chongyin, the 7th round also, 1 minute. I don't have enough time. I already raised the question just now. PWSC 151630, the document mentions that you did not favor having this internal management fee for the or budget for the district. Why are you proposing that now? Well, for the last round, because we thought that the amount was small for this management fee cost, and therefore we thought that the authority could absorb that on its own. But now, given 3B, its complexity, its cost of construction is high, and therefore, starting from now, we would want to provide for this management budget to the authority. It is but a small percentage of the total. But no, the nature is the same as previous projects. Well, perhaps Mrs. Lee can talk about the difference between 3A and 3B. For 3A, the government part of the construction relative to 3B is smaller, because for 3A in the area, the authority is responsible for the M+ project. And most of the area is within the jurisdiction of the authority, and therefore to add more human resources to monitor the government's part of the work is minimal. And that is why in the last round we did not apply for funding on this particular point. Ms. Chan, I'm looking at the alignment of the road and how wide the road. I don't have that information, if I remember correctly. And after looking at the diagram even and the appendices, I'm looking at Appendix 2, page 1 and 2 of that appendix, and I see that there is width described, but I also see that it is quite deep. I don't understand how it actually works. And would these lines actually link up to the parking space? Because there is not a lot of information, I would want to ask for more information, Mr. Chair, excuse me. Ms. Pang will answer that question. Thank you for the question. Thank you, Chair. If we look at Appendix 1, page 3, there is a cross-section diagram, AA, and we see that the width is 10.3 meters. And the disembarking area is 3 meters, and the footpath is 2.5 meters. Right. This is the... yes, and does it link up to the parking area? But if we don't have information even for that, that's not acceptable. And for fire drills, right? Yes, you can provide the information afterwards. Provide the octopus diagrams, please, how it links up to 2A, 3, etc. I think that's only reasonable that we should have that information. Well, members are concerned about the connection to other zones. Can you provide that information? Mr. Chair, just about Mr. Chow's question just now, the parking area, can you also show that in the diagram that you will provide? This is 1 o'clock. We end the morning meeting here. We resume at 5 p.m. this afternoon. As mentioned, if you have any 32A motions, please provide them before 4 p.m. to me. Now, because we only have 2 hours in the afternoon, it is impossible that for me to accept more 32A motions in the afternoon. Please cooperate. I hope you understand. Thank you.